just being good.
See, so Rick, if you're 71, I'm 67, so that's 3 years difference. So that's why you would have been a senior, I would have been a freshman.
You young.
And back in the day, we weren't even together. Remember, his freshman high, we were all on our
Now,
own.
again, I didn't grow up here. My wife did.
Oh, you didn't?
I
Okay.
grew up in Greenfield.
That's where my dad's from. Do you know
Wait,
the
my
son lives
McLarenans, the
there.
McLarenans?
Oh, yeah,
He was the mayor.
Oh, yeah. Marcia Ann and I went to
Marcia
school.
Ann. They are my parents' cousins,
Yeah,
my dad's
yeah.
cousins.
You got 1 minute.
We
One
love
minute, Carl.
Marcia Ann.
Yeah. How's she doing?
We used to go there every year for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that was hard. She was a little younger than Bob. Oh, no, she would have been about.
Oh, no, she's younger than Bob.
Yeah.
But Marcia Ann's dad and my dad looked up to them. They were like uncles to my dad. But there were like 6 brothers. They were all in
Well, and Keith was the mayor forever, and they even named the city hall after him, you know. Yeah.
Keith and Joanne.
Good
Yeah.
And then,
And then CarMax, where I bought all my clothes when I was younger. That was their clothing store.
Good
Okay, tell
evening
me,
and welcome, Old Home Week, and welcome to the Warsaw Board of Zoning Appeals, January 22nd, 2024 meeting. We will open with, I need approval of the minutes, please, from last month.
Madam President, I've read the minutes. If there are no further comments or questions, I would move to approve.
Do I have a second, please?
second.
Thanks, Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. We have some unfinished, well, it's not unfinished, but we also have one other thing we need to tend to tonight, which is not on the agenda, with the election of officers for 2024. Do I have any motions?
I nominate Tammy Dalton for president.
I second that.
Yeah, could we like make it a little quicker, Jeff? I mean, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Now to unfinished business.
Vice President.
I'm sorry. Oh, we need a vice president too. Oh,
Rick
yeah.
Keenan. Rick Keenan? Rick. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good job, board, gentlemen. Now we will move to unfinished business. 2023-1104, the use ordinance on 4 Yarnell Point.
The petitioner has requested a use variance to allow a secondary residential structure in an R1. The owners are planning on rebuilding the current accessory structure with a second story. They are also planning on removing and rebuilding the primary residence. When rebuilding the primary residence, the owners plan to live in the newly rebuilt accessory structure. Once the primary residence is finished, the accessory structure is to be used as a guest house or living quarters for family and friends. There is no plan to rent the space in the future. Multifamily uses are not allowed in R1 districts. Based on the findings of fact, it's the opinion of the planning department that this variance should not be ruled favorably at 4 Yarnell Point due to the potential negative impact on property values and neighboring properties. If approved, this could also set, never mind, we discussed that. So, yep, there's that.
And I want to tag on to what Jackson just said. This is from a copy of the May 29th, 2018 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. It was item 2018-0501, a use variance for 4 Yarnell Point to allow multifamily in an R1. Our former president, Mr. Allen, turned the meeting over to Justin at the time, who gave a brief overview of the request. The petitioner is requesting a use variance to allow multifamily residential to be located within an R1 zoning district. The property located at 4 Yarnell Lane currently has 2 accessory structures in addition to the primary structure, a guest house and a boathouse. The guest house currently functions as an existing non-conforming rented living space. The petitioner would like to incorporate rentable living space into the boathouse as well. And it went on to explain the differences, but both of these cases, but the bottom line is we denied that petition in 2018. And I feel like we're back with the same thing. The only difference here is that we have Mr. Snyder representing the petitioner. And with that, I'll let you speak.
Thank you. We're not back with the same thing. That was a request for multifamily use in an R1 district. This will continue to be a single-family use. There's a major difference there simply because the use variance was directly for multifamily use with the intent that there could be 3 separate families occupying 3 separate structures. It's not what we're applying for here. We're applying for a single-family residence with a guest house that will be used by that same single family. We had this discussion last month about the restrictions that would be placed on the use and what you desired to see. So the last 3 pages of the handout are the revised deed that will impose covenants on this tract. And I want to address this issue first because, Tammy, you raised it. And the second to the last paragraph, I just want to quote it. The use of the above described real estate shall be for single-family purposes, not multifamily. Neither of the 2 residences on the real estate may be rented separately or used for income-producing purposes, one from the other, without the approval of the Warsaw Board of Zoning Appeals. This shall not prevent rental of both residences to the same tenant or use of either residence by extended family or guests. The stay of any guest in the guest house, the smaller of the 2 residences on the real estate, shall not exceed 10 consecutive days. This covenant may be enforced by the Warsaw Board of Zoning Appeals or the owner of any property commonly known as 1, 2, 3, 5, or 6 Yarnell Point, all in Warsaw, Indiana. So with that, and Scott gave me the thumbs up on this, it's obviously your approval, but I believe that language addressed all of the issues that you raised concerning using it as a rental property, separate from the main residence, using it as an income-producing property, so that you didn't have to worry about niece and nephew coming in and continuing to rent it. And I use that term in the broadest sense, but live there for more than 10 days. You're not going to have guests in there for more than 10 days. This is a single-family use. And that is the purpose of the use variance, is a second residence, not a change in use from a single-family zoning category. That single-family thought imposed by the zoning ordinance continues, and it will be for a single family. What this won't be any different than is when my family descends on me for a week in August, I've got a boathouse with a guest room in it. That's one of the 3 times a year it gets used, but I don't rent it out. It's still a single family use, and it's used by family. Well, that's what is intended here. Either family or guests, but guests can't stay longer than 10 days. It's like fish, I guess. 10 days and it's old, you want it out. Okay, in this case, we've imposed that covenant on it to take care of that. There are 3 variances being requested, and I assume we're going to hear them all at the same time. The other one is, besides the secondary residence in an R1 district, is accessory structure that's 21 feet 6 inches high, which is taller than the current residence. The current residence was destroyed by fire, and as soon as negotiations with the insurance carrier are complete, it will be demolished, and the new residence will be 25 feet tall. So this proposed structure will not be taller than the ultimate residence. But this will be built before the final residence is built, the owner's intending to live in it while the new residence is built. Secondly, it's 18 feet 6 inches from the water's edge. That's the setback for the current boathouse, which is 18 feet 6 inches from the water's edge. We want to locate the new structure at the same distance. So, You've heard most of this before, but let's talk a little bit to the height at 21.6. It will be lower than the new residence when it is constructed. We need the variance now simply to construct it before the replacement main residence is constructed, so the parties can live in it. 18 feet 6 inches from the water, it's the same as the current structure, which has been there since 1954 and needs to come down. We don't affect anyone's view because we're building in exactly the same place that the current structure exists. This property has 2 lake yard setbacks and 1 street yard setback. All of those impose a condition on the property that makes it difficult to locate these structures and meet all those setbacks. As I said, 18 feet 6 inches from the water has no effect simply because that's where the current structure is, which, as a non-conforming use, could continue to exist if it can't be replaced by this request. Is there anything dangerous to any of these? No. We have the same driveway access we have now. There will actually be additional parking space created when the main residence is constructed. There are adequate setbacks from the water, which are always the most important for the main residence. It's only the secondary residence that will be 18 feet 6 inches from the water. New residences always tend to enhance values. When you're replacing, in this case, a fire damaged residence with a new residence, that is significant. When you're replacing a 1954 structure with questionable structure soundness, then you're going to enhance values from that standpoint. Again, we've got the fire damage, we've got 3 significant setbacks on the property, we've got a 1954 structure that needs to go away, and we want to locate the house and the secondary structure so that they preserve the lakefront aspects of this property. But with the setbacks that we have, 2 from the water and 1 from the street, we need to get all of these variances approved. Secondly, we're not making it a multifamily use. It will remain single family. It's zoned single family. As I indicated initially, I've probably done 75 of these around the lakes, whether it's on Tippecanoe or Syracuse or Webster or Wawasee. And it's become very common because people have the need for overflow guests on the lake. People descend on you. It's a fact of life. It won't be occupied all the time. It will be occupied for additional guests or family when you have a large family gathering, which could take place at Christmas. But the intent here is to allow it to be constructed now at the height requested, at the setback requested, so the Galloways can construct it and live in it while they demolish and rebuild the main house. But it will still be a single family use.
Any questions for Mr. Snyder? For Mr. Snyder?
Steve, at one time I thought there was an 18-foot height issue too. Did you address that and I missed it, or?
There's an issue of 21 feet 6 inches high, and that is the height of the proposed secondary residence. You can't have an accessory structure on a lot that is taller than the main residence. In this case, the current fire damaged house is less than 21 feet tall.
Right.
And in order to build this now, we need that variance, understanding that the final residence that will replace the fire damaged residence will have a height in excess of 25 feet.
But and maybe I got this wrong, but I thought there was a second issue about 18 foot was the limit for secondary buildings, or am I, Justin's nodding his head yes back there.
That's correct. The permitted height for an accessory structure is 18 feet, and it, at the same time, cannot be taller than the primary residence.
So
there-
it's a 1-2 thing, so I'm just trying to understand, what's the reasoning for overcoming the 18-foot limit?
When you're building a two-story structure, you don't want a flat roof on it. And if you have two 8-foot ceilings, you're then going to have 18 feet of building height. What we want is two 8-foot ceilings and a pitch roof or gable roof on the structure, because one, that's much more compatible with the neighborhood, and it will be more compatible with the final structure. So it's a matter of making it usable and making it aesthetically complementary to the proposed final main house.
My second question, I think last time we talked, you talked about one of the buildings was used as a residence, the one you want to tear down, is that
Right.
correct? And was that in essence like a guest house, or was that something else?
Yeah, it was a guest house. So there were two residences on this property,
Okay,
and that one's gonna go. So we're not ending up with three residences, we're ending up with one main residence, a guest house, and that's it. The third one comes down.
was this second residence there when the current owner lived there? And if
Yes.
so, what kind of usage did it receive then?
Well, it was used as a second residence.
Okay, but it was a lot, I guess at that point, it was a residence.
It had residential facilities in it.
And it had its own address?
No, I don't think it's ever had an address other than 4 Yarnell.
Okay, my point being, was it used routinely
No,
as a rental or anything like that then?
no, it wasn't.
Okay,
And that's when they came in 2018 for the request, they were looking to utilize that, convert the existing boathouse into another residence, and allow them to be rented separately, all three of them. That was denied.
okay,
So that's why we're coming back now saying, we're not gonna rent any of them, and we'll put the covenant on the title to the property to that effect, so it binds not only the Galloways, but anyone they would sell to. And we're using it for single-family purposes, merely for overflow guests or family.
and then the last question, last time there was talk about if you built a breezeway, that negates the whole situation. I guess I'm just curious, can you build a breezeway to nowhere and overcome this whole situation, even though there's no house to join it to?
Well, I think you could, ultimately, with the construction of the main residence, somehow connect them to an extent that would be satisfactory to the plan staff and call it one residence. Wouldn't look good, wouldn't be particularly functional, and wouldn't be aesthetically compatible with the neighborhood. It would be a long, narrow hallway, if you will.
Okay,
But that would allow for then this overflow residence to be constructed as we're proposing.
okay, thank you.
I'd also like to remind the board that we do have 5 letters in opposition of this proposal.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this? If not, do we have people in the audience that would like to speak in opposition of this petition? If so, you can come up to the podium, state your name, please, for the press and us.
My name is Carly Bannon, and I've lived in that neighborhood my whole life. My parents still live in the neighborhood. My grandparents lived in the neighborhood. We are a neighborhood of 125 homes. We don't have an HOA, which is unheard of in this day and age. I know everyone in the neighborhood. We all get along. Nobody breaks the rules. Nobody has a guest house on their single-family property. And I'm requesting that you deny this because I believe it will open just a whole can of worms in this neighborhood that has no HOAs to variances. And I guess that's the way I feel, is that we were here 4 years ago and it was denied. I see no reason not to deny it and not to open up this can of worms that everybody else in the neighborhood now will start wanting to do this or that. And that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Bannon. I'm her husband. I haven't lived here my whole life. But at the risk of being adjudged as unkind, I would impress upon the board the fact that it may not be unreasonable for those neighbors to have a bit of skepticism around the claims that have been eloquently shared by, counselor behind me, about the security that we have, that no rentals will take place or this or that will all be done. The truth is we've been living with a burned out Hulk for years now at that location. If the owner had the money or cared enough about the neighborhood to fix it and address the problems, we wouldn't be as skeptical as we are. And now we're told to believe that, in fact, there will be a properly built second structure, and they'll live in it while they're watching the hammers and nails, being done building the other. And I have a lot of skepticism about how long it'll be till we ever see that. And I have a feeling that what we're going to see is one structure for quite a while, and that's what we're going to have, the secondary structure, because we really don't have any guarantee that anything gets done before that. And I hope you recognize that while you can make claims to what you're going to do in a deed is one thing, what actually happens in real life is another. And these people over here and the people that wrote the letters have been longtime residents of this little circle and a greater neighborhood that's gotten along very well for the most part. And we have concern that the creation of a precedent in allowing variances that are uncommonly approved is just a slippery slope that we don't want to see us go down.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? With that, yes, Mr. Snyder?
One of the things that strikes me, and of course I've been dealing with this for 50 plus years now, is that everybody assumes nobody is going to do what they promised to do. Now, if everybody did, I probably would be driving a truck, because I get paid when people don't do what they say they do. The provisions we put in the quitclaim deed that you requested allow all of the people on Yarnell Point in this area to enforce these covenants, as well as the Board of Zoning Appeals. They are conditions that none of these people would be willing to place on their own residence. Let's assume someone has a 6-bedroom house and they want to have guests for 2 weeks. Are they going to voluntarily impose a covenant on their residents that those guests can only stay 10 days, not 2 weeks? No, they're not going to. If we were building a large house, or as Rick suggests, we connect it with a breezeway, you wouldn't be asking for that condition here. The mere fact that we might have a couple bedrooms and a bathroom and a living room detached from the main house shouldn't restrict the use of that more than what we're already volunteering to do. It's still a single-family use. And the fact that there is nothing else in the neighborhood like it, well, maybe there's not a lot that is large enough to accommodate it. This is a large lot. This is a lot that already has 3 structures on it. We're proposing to remove one, reconstruct one to make it current standards, and then reconstruct a house. Now, reconstruction of the damaged house, most people can't go out and build a new house if their house burns down unless they receive the insurance proceeds that they are expecting. There is a dispute between the Galloways and their insurance company. I'm not involved in it, but I know it's been going on since the fire. And until those proceeds are available, they're not going to be in a position to rebuild that house. We have to assume ultimately the insurance company will do what it's supposed to do and pay for the fire damage. But it's a sad situation. It always is when there's a dispute with your insurance company, whether it's for the damage to your car or the damage to your house. But either way, until that's resolved, it creates issues. Here, what we're saying is we want to project what will happen with this property. We want it to remain a single-family neighborhood. We just don't want to connect this guest house to the main house by a 60-foot-long breezeway, or whatever that distance would be. That's non-functional, aesthetically displeasing, and simply unnecessary, but that would be a way around it.
Thank you.
Steve, you brought up the issue of rebuilding a new house, and you've always made it sound like that's pretty open-ended, though. I mean, there's no end sight on when this thing's gonna get resolved, and I think one of the big contentions is they got this burned-out house that kind of detracts from the overall ambiance and property values. Is that just unanswerable about when that'll ever be addressed?
I don't have that information, and I don't think the Galloways have that information as of this point.
But it hasn't been resolved in 6 years.
Correct.
That's what gets me. That's not good.
Any other questions of Mr. Snyder?
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, any other issues or any other remarks from the opposition here? I think with that, yes, sir?
So I just have a couple things just to make sure that our record is clean and that we remember when we're making our decisions what's allowable and not allowable. So property rights that come before the BZA, these variances, these exceptions, we're not to consider the character of who's asking for it or the character of who's asking against it. And so my example is we can't be, it's okay if the Catholics ask, but not the Methodists, right? Or the Methodists don't like it, so we can't do that here. So the character of the people involved, just it's clear that you're not to consider that. So I know there's been some discussions about that. You're just not allowed to consider that. And then just kind of a nuance, nothing you do here sets a legal precedent. Somebody can't come back next week and say, legally, you allowed this, so legally you have to allow us again. BZA matters are not precedental, so you're not bound to the next person about what you would do here one way or the other than there may be some idea of if this happens, other people may ask for it to happen again. But it's not a legal precedent that gets set here by anything that you do. It's specifically not precedent. So I just wanted to remind you of those two things before you made your decisions.
Any comments, discussion here?
Yes. You know, as this board is here, we're not here to set
zoning ordinances. We're not here to change zoning ordinances. We are here to decide whether or not we make an exception to an ordinance based on the information that's been given to us. It's very clear what our guidelines are. All 5 of these things. And if you read down through them, number 2, number 3, number 4 does not apply to this at all. We are not, there is no need for this variance because there's a particular issue with this property. Because what we're doing is for this particular property and only this particular property. The application constitute an unnecessary hardship? No, it does not. It does not constitute an unnecessary hardship for this piece of property. This piece of property will be what it is. We've heard from neighbors that says that it could maybe affect the value of their property if we do this. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we apparently have neighbors that say that they're concerned with that. And that's something that we have to listen to. So,
Comments? Any other comments?
based on the information that we've been given and based on the information they had, I will make a motion that we deny this.
Does anyone want to make a second on that one?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bob. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Am I allowed to abstain?
Sure, you're allowed to abstain.
I abstain. I can't make a decision on this one. I think you've got a majority though.
Motion carries.
Yeah, motion carries, yeah.
Petition denied. And with that, is there any reason to, what do we need to do with the other two?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Do you feel a need to continue with the 2 other variances?
I made the assumption when I asked Tammy in the beginning that we were hearing all 3 of them at once.
We didn't technically do that. We can hear the remaining 2, if you would like. If that would make a difference.
Well, as far as I'm concerned,
So just, let me interrupt. I think Mr. Snyder presented his discussion about all 3. I believe you voted no to the use variance
use
allowing a
variance.
secondary residential structure.
We can
Do you
vote
want to
on-
vote on the other 2 issues as well? Because I think you've heard what there is to hear about
Right.
those.
Is it cleaner if we do that?
Kim wants a vote.
Okay.
So do I have a motion for the development standards, which, I don't know which one is 02,
What was that, Jackson?
21.6 in height.
right?
And I'll make that motion. That we vote against.
Do I have a second on that one?
I'll second
All in favor?
it. Aye.
Motion carries. 2023 1102 is denied. 2023-1103.
For the development standards.
And that one,
This is
Jackson.
the 18.6 lake setback, maintaining that setback.
And I'll make a motion that we deny.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Motion carried. And with that, do we have any other business to come before us tonight?
If not, Madam President, I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that one?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
I was bored. Personnel got involved in it.